We will be putting this recording up on our website and YouTube after this training is over so that it can be accessed by everybody. And so if you need to step out at all, or you have friends that weren't able to join now, they can watch it later. And I'm just gonna wait until about 4:32 just to make sure that we can get lots of people in as they start cycling in. All right, looking at this poll, it seems like we got a good mix of students, coaches, staff, and directors. So I'm so glad that you all could join today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Byron Minson. I am the Education and Outreach Coordinator with the Virginia Association of Soil and Water. I run the statewide Envirothon program as well as our other education programs. And I'm super excited to have the Monacan Indian Nation here with us today to put on this special topic training. As people are coming in, I just again want to share that this is being recorded and will be posted on our website and YouTube for viewing at any time. I also have a short little poll that I launched that you should see on your screen somewhere, just so that I can see who is here. It seems like we've got a good mix of students, coaches, and staff and directors. I also, as folks are coming in, want to share a resource with everybody. The Monacan Indian Nation has a booklet that is available for purchase at their museum. It's $5, and it gives lots of great information on the culture and history of the Monacan Indian Nation. But we understand that not everybody can drive to the museum. So if you are close, I highly recommend going and checking it out. But if not, I do have an order form that you can go to and order the book for $5, and we will ship it to you. So if you are interested in purchasing those booklets and getting another resource from the Monacan Indian Nation, I've put that form in the chat. So feel free to look at that. I will also send that out via email to everyone who is registered. So you'll have access to the link later as well. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers tonight. We are joined by two folks who work with the Monacan Indian Nation. As many of you know, we are collaborating with the Monacan Indian Nation with our special topic this year for Envirothon. If you are not familiar, our special topic this year is Roots and Resiliency, Fostering Forest Stewardship and a Canopy of Change. And for the for the oral presentation component of that special topic, we collaborated with the Monacan Indian Nation, and students are tasked with looking into their land stewardship concerns and goals. And so here tonight we have two staff of the nation to chat more about you all with the history of the Monacan Indian Nation, their culture, as well as this piece of land that you are tasked with looking at in the oral presentation. So to introduce them, we have John Pierce, who is the Environmental Program Manager with the Monacan Indian Nation, as well as Sally Latimer, who is the Director of the Monacan Indian Nation Cultural Foundation and the Monacan Food Bank. So without further ado, you guys can take it away. Oh, I'm sorry. If there will also be lots of times for questions. So sorry to pause my introductions there, but if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll be looking through them, and there will be lots of time for questions at the end. So ask lots of questions, drop them in the chat. We'll get to them. But anyways, John and Sally, take it away.
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is John Pierce. I'm the Environmental Program Manager here at the Monacan Indian Nation. I'm not a tribal citizen. I'm just an advocate for the tribal citizens in their government. So I really am enjoying my work here over the past a year and change. And I was hoping to have Sue Elliott, who is the museum coordinator, on today, but she actually had car trouble, so she couldn't join us. So I apologize for that. And I was hoping to have Chief Shields as well, but she was double booked, and she has a lot of different things to attend all over Virginia, so I apologize. But we're really excited to come talk to you guys today. It was an awesome time in Madison County in November, getting to meet you guys and hear your awesome questions. So this is like about a 10-minute presentation, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions. And Sally, if you want to just say a quick little just hi and let everybody know.
Hi, guys. I am a citizen of the Monacan Nation. I am also a board member to the Monacan Nation Cultural Foundation, and I'm the director of the food bank. I'm honored to be here. Thank you guys for having me. And I look forward to seeing what questions you have.
Cool. Well, yeah, we can get right into it. So we got plenty of time for questions. A quick little agenda. Just a brief overview of Monacan history. I am not an expert. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a citizen. So everything I've learned about the Monacan Nation has basically been within the past 5 years or so since moving to Virginia. So I don't want to misrepresent anything, and I would just defer to the museum and the resources that the nation provides for y'all to get the really deep history kind of stuff. But just a brief overview of history, discussion of the Laurel Cliff property that is the focus of the Envirothon prompt, and then we'll just get right into questions and discussion. So first, here is my slide's not changing. There we go. So the Monacan Indian Nation, this is a very brief overview that I prepared just to give a little background. This is basically similar if you were in Madison County in November. This is similar to what kind of some of the intro that we were talking about there. But the Monacan people self-identify as a woodland people, and they have lived in the region of Virginia that's west of the fall line for at least 10,000 years in the archaeological record. And with that deep history of interacting with the landscape, there is this very relational understanding of the forest ecosystem, thinking of entities in the forest, whether they're animals, plants, or even rivers, and things that are traditionally considered inanimate, thinking of those as kin, which is very common throughout the indigenous cultures of North America. You'll notice very prominently in the tribal seal, the black bear, which symbolizes survival, persistence, and self-understanding, which I think is a really powerful image for people even today. And just they're great. Who doesn't love black bears, except when they're getting into your trash. But they're headquartered in Amherst County, Virginia, which is where I work. And they have been living in Virginia, in Amherst County, since at least the 1830s, when land was purchased by a tribal citizen, which is what you'll see on the top left image there. That is the one-room schoolhouse and the church. There's also now a tribal center and tribal hall and a museum. It's a really beautiful place if you do get the chance to visit. That was the first part of Monacan land that I was able to see, and it's just a beautiful respite in the middle of the woods at the foot of Bear Mountain. So that's the other reason for the bear symbolism is Bear Mountain as this heart of the Monacan community. The Monacan citizens were able to hold on to their culture through years of intense prejudice and racial segregation by local and state governments as part of the Racial Integrity Acts of 1924, which put a heavy focus on indigenous folks in Virginia, basically trying to erase them from the records. And our current Chief Shields, has done a lot of work to correct those records, along with many other community members, to try and get birth records straight and have Native American listed correctly on people's birth certificates. The tribe was federally recognized in 2018 and then state recognized prior to that in 1989. So it's been a long process between state and federal recognition. And basically, as part of that federal recognition, it's been a lot of just capacity building and learning to interact with different federal agencies. There's currently over 3,000 tribal citizens in, I believe, 47 states. So the majority of those folks live in Virginia. That's about half. And then there's pretty large Monacan diaspora communities in Maryland and Ohio and North Carolina. But again, like all over the country, there are Monacan citizens, which is pretty cool. Since federal recognition, like I said, we've received funding from the EPA and other federal agencies to begin building our programs, including the environmental program, where I am the sole staff member right now. And there is a powwow in May and June, usually June, and homecoming in October, both of which are open to the public. And I had the opportunity to go to the homecoming this year for the first time, which was awesome. Got to see Sally and her family and all a bunch of other tribal community members and meet people, and it's just a blast. So if you ever have a chance in October or June, come out to powwow and homecoming. To get into the Laurel Cliff property, it was acquired in 2021. It is a 1,300-acre property. The tribal government owns about 1,500 acres in total, so there's about 200 acres on Bear Mountain that is heavily forested and used for cultural and spiritual practices, including like a memorial garden and a sweat lodge and some other kind of trails up the mountain and things like that that are for tribal citizens to commune with nature and ancestors and things of that nature. So our spiritual program uses that a lot. Previously, the land was used for grazing for dairy cows. It's a lot of rolling hills and streams and gullies. We can't really tell from this image on the left that shows kind of the outlines of the property with the pine plantations that I'll talk about a little bit later. And now we're looking to engage in biocultural restoration on the property, which I'll talk about in the next slide. There's currently 3 houses on the property, which there may actually be more, but there's 2 that are owned by or that are rented by tribal citizens, and then there's a larger house that was the previous owner's occupancy. About 1,000 acres of forest, so mostly forested, which is really nice, and then in between that kind of just pastures. And then there's 5 acres of lake and water features with some minor wetlands as well in the lowlands. So what is biocultural restoration? It is, I got this question and I kind of struggled to come up with an answer on the fly because I am so familiar with the concept and I'm just not good at definitions generally. So I did some research and got some good definitions here. It is a scientific practice that aims to restore the health of ecosystems and the relationships between people and culture and the land and ecosystem. Something that I've learned and really enjoyed getting to experience firsthand is just how connected this community is through everything that they've been through. It's always just really awesome to see people come together and start to think about and just reminisce about, times they've had out in the woods or what have you. I mean, there's a lot of really passionate outdoorsmen and folks that hunt and fish and just forage and just like to be outdoors. So it's always awesome to hear those connections that people have. It's basically biocultural restoration is a combination of kind of this Western concept of general scientific knowledge and methodology, the scientific method, things you would learn in kind of a standard science class, combining that with traditional ecological knowledge, that more relational understanding that I was kind of alluding to earlier. I really liked this quote from a Mi'kmaq elder who kind of coined the term two-eyed seeing, which is what is another name for this concept. Mi'kmaq elder Albert Marshall said that it's viewing the world from one eye with the strengths of indigenous ways of knowing, and to see from the other eye with the strengths of Western ways of knowing, and to use both of these eyes together. I really thought that was an awesome quote and way to think about how modern science can be combined with kind of indigenous understandings of the ecosystem and kind of braided together. You'd see an image of braided sweetgrass on the bottom. There's a fantastic book, if you're not familiar, called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. That's a really fantastic examination of biocultural restoration and what that looks like. This is just a closer view of that lake area on the property. There is a dam that holds this lake back. It was built in the 60s, and it's part of our climate goal to get this dam to be a little bit more climate resilient and back into compliance. I've learned a lot about dam compliance over the past year to kind of try and get that project together. But basically, we would love to be able to build wildlife services and climate resilience and flooding resilience into the planning for anything. If you want to do an aquatics project, that would be a really cool way to take this. But if you don't want to, that's fine too. There's a lot of opportunity to kind of mix and match what your group is interested in the prompt. And I think, I think it would just be really awesome to have that is a resource not just for tribal citizens to come and hunt and fish, and like pass that knowledge on, but also for animals in the ecosystem as a drinking hole, kind of, you know, improving the water infrastructure of the property. The house I did not include a picture of, but there's an old kind of 1920s brick house on the property as well that you can kind of see south of the lake, with an attached greenhouse that would need a lot of work if we were going to do any renovation there. And lastly, I just have the prompt. I can kind of go over this bullet by bullet, but then we can open it up to questions. The main, I'm sure you already have this document and have looked it over very much in the past couple of months, but we are looking for any and all ideas in your presentations. We're really excited to see what y'all come up with and what your teams come up with. The main things to address are the impacts of climate change to this property and to the region, and then building kind of a management plan that includes soil health and post-timbering land use for those pine areas that were outlined earlier, and then two more of the following concepts or subcategories, I guess you could say. So hunting and fishing, cultural practices, including basket making, pottery, foraging, wildfire management. We had a really large wildfire in Bedford County last year that I think took out about 1,300 acres of forest. So if that had been on Monacan land, it would have taken out the entirety of the forest, which is pretty scary. Food sovereignty work. Sally and I have been collaborating a lot with the rest of the food bank and the tribal government on like how can we start regenerative agriculture and farming on this property and kind of build soil health and build ecosystem health and food for animals and food plots for hunting animals and things like that. Just thinking, how can we kind of start a program that will support the food bank and support the food sovereignty of the nation, but also give food back to the community as a whole. You can talk about invasive species and then also community spaces. We do use this property for the powwow, but we would love to have like more community infrastructure there to help folks feel like, you know, able give folks a place to, you know, another place to experience kind of Monacan land and Monacan cultural connection with the forest. So those are the other additional topics. We also are looking for a timeline, anticipated challenges, and then cost and financing options. So I think that's pretty much all I had. So we can kind of open it up to questions if Sally, if you want to add anything. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have any thing to add, that would be awesome.
John, I think you did a great job. I think you covered everything. So let's open it up to questions.
Cool. Sounds good.
I did get one question that says, would the tribe be open to us visiting the land?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that we would kind of need to talk about what that would look like. We might be able to, I don't know, we might be able to coordinate something like another group trip or some sort of visit. I don't see why not, but I don't want to make that call. That's not really my decision, but I can talk with Chief Shields and we can see what yeah, we can, or I think we're open to it, but we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we can definitely continue that conversation and see what collaboration we could possibly get. But I will also once again plug the museum. The Monacan Nation has an excellent museum, and if you are interested in getting a more hands-on look at the Monacan Nation and their land, definitely visit the museum. It's a great resource.
Yeah, that is open to the public. I believe it's open Thursday through Sunday, I want to say. Now I think are the new days of operation, and that is just a gorgeous part of tribal land. So I would highly recommend visiting if you get a chance to.
All right, our next question is, what are some community events that MIN members participate in regularly other than the powwow? Oh,
that's a really good question. as far as just like general events, we have an elder care program that has currently lunches twice a week for elders and whoever, any guests that want to come as well. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the time of year. We had a really fun Christmas party a couple weeks ago before we broke for the holidays, and I really love getting the chance to just chat with the elders and learn more from them. I mean, they're so full of information, and it's just really awesome to see everybody every week or so. There's also, I just thought of one and then it flew completely out of my head.
John, I can add to that and just
Yeah, go
say that
ahead.
we also have a culture class. So our kids come together, learn the culture, learn the powwow etiquette, learn how to make regalia, and language, all of those great things. So that's a good and it's not just for the kids. We kind of focus more towards the children, teaching them those things, but we absolutely have adults that attend as well. So that's a big community thing that we do. And that just gives our kids an opportunity to learn more about their own heritage, their culture, language, and all of that stuff. So that's a big one as well.
I remembered the other thing I was thinking of too, which is we are hoping to have an intertribal Earth Day event this year in April. So I believe that's going to be in the eastern part of the state. So I can keep Byron up to date with that and how the planning goes for that. But we're really excited. We did one in 2022, and I believe my predecessor in the role, Kaylee, who is actually the chief's granddaughter, she brought a huge bus of folks down to Werowocomoco, and she said it was awesome. It was a really fun day, and they just got to learn more about the park and learn more about the history of the of indigenous people on that land and stuff. And it was just a really cool ceremony. So we're hoping to do something similar this year. And then we have kind of periodic one-off kind of events as well. We're starting a child care program and some other things that will kind of have more community aspects to it. Yeah.
All right, next question is more about the Laurel Cliff land. It is, why did you not keep the cattle, and did you want to add any other animals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there actually are, I meant to mention this earlier, there are still a tribal citizen is grazing, I think 50 head of cattle on one of the northern pastures. So there is still some grazing going on, but we, I believe, I was kind of not, as I mentioned earlier, kind of started about a little bit over a year ago. So I wasn't around when the decisions were being made. So I don't really have insight into why. I would assume they were just the previous owner's cattle, and they either sold them or moved or had them processed. But we would love to look at like how can we integrate animals into our into the programs that Sally and I have been talking about. We've been talking a lot about chickens and other like maybe more indigenous North American fowl or other like turkeys or something else. We just had a really excellent call yesterday about that. So yeah, we would definitely be open to other like livestock or animals on the property to increase fertility and things like that.
The next question is, what was the magnitude of the grant funding provided by the EPA?
Yeah, sure. That is a great question. We get, not to get too granular, but there is a program within the EPA called the GAP program, the General Assistance Program, that is available for all federally recognized tribes, and it goes by region. So within EPA Region 3, which is Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, and West Virginia, the 7 tribes are all located in Virginia. So all of the federally recognized tribes in Virginia receive about the same amount, which fluctuates somewhat year to year with the budget, but it's usually around $100,000, $100,000 to $150,000, which sounds like a lot. It sounded like a lot to me when I came on, and then I quickly started doing the budget and figuring out salary and benefits for just myself, and that is like personnel takes up a lot of that budget already, and then things like building costs and depreciation and utilities and all that stuff. So a lot of the leftover of that amount goes to programmatic stuff. This year, I'm hoping to buy some water testing equipment so we can start doing water quality testing out at Laurel Cliff for the streams and ponds and stuff that are on the property. But so to answer that, yeah, we receive about 100 to 150,000 a year for the GAP program.
The next question is, are there any religious or cultural beliefs that we should be aware of before we make our plans?
That is
Do
a
you
really good question. Yeah,
I
Sally,
was
do you
gonna,
want to go ahead?
I was getting ready to say, do you want me to take that one?
I would, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what I would say is that all of our, with outside of the powwow, which is also a ceremony, but outside of that, all of our, ceremonies are held on Bear Mountain, and we have no plans to move any of that to Laurel Cliff. So I would say that the answer would probably be there's nothing you should be aware of per se, since all of those ceremonies will be staying at Bear Mountain or the old tribal hall.
Mhm.
The next question is, how many members of the nation are currently living on or near the land? What is the current population of the MIN?
Sure. So the current population, we just broke the 3,000 mark in 2024. So I think it was a little under 3,000 when I started in late 2023. So we had about another 200 or so members sign up over the past year. I believe so. We have I need to count the counties. We have a 9 or 10 county service area in Central Virginia, and within that service area, from basically Botetourt County to Buckingham County, and then Augusta County south to Campbell County, that like cluster of counties, there's about 1,500 tribal citizens living in the area. In Amherst County, I'm not actually sure, but I mean, there's a ton of people that come to drive from like Ohio or Maryland to come to tribal meetings and stuff too. So there's a lot of folks that are in and around the area just visiting family or coming through to get paperwork done or something like that. There's a lot of folks kind of coming through the area as well, because it is, as I mentioned earlier, kind of the heart of the community.
All right, the next question is, what species of honeysuckle are the elders using to weave their baskets?
This is a great question. Sally, I've talked to Aunt Bertie about this. Do you have any insight into this? Because I don't know that she knows the species, and she's like the premier, like she knows what she's looking for because she's been doing it her whole life, but I don't know that it is a specific species or not.
I know that she goes out and she knows what she's looking for. I know it is the honeysuckle that kind of is on the ground, not the one that finds up the tree. But as far as a specific species, I wouldn't know the name of it. I just know it's honeysuckle, and I know that Aunt Bertie goes out, she can find it, she sees it, she knows it's what she needs.
Yep. That's kind of the impression that I've got from talking to Miss Birdie as well. She's awesome. She just has all of this knowledge. She's been like cutting wood for her entire life basically. So she's just very comfortable going out in the woods and doing all kinds of foraging, for not only for baskets but also for medicinal stuff. I always love talking to her because she has really amazing like medicinal and plant knowledge. But yeah, I've heard the same thing about it climbing up the trees rather than she said, I think she said it tends to get too brittle if it's climbing up the trees. So she looks for, and it's easier to collect on the ground. So I think that's the main thing that she's looking for. And I mean, if we're planting something, I think we would prefer it be a native or something that's not going to go rampant and be invasive. But that would be, I think, the main consideration for honeysuckle.
All right. Are there any culturally important foods that you are interested in cultivating as part of your food sovereignty and food bank efforts?
Awesome question. Sally, do you want me to go? Do you want to go? We can kind of tag team this one.
I was getting ready to say, you want to start it and we'll go from
Yeah,
there?
sure. So Sue, who I had hoped would be able to join us, has done a lot of awesome work up at the museum, seed saving year to year. I know specifically there is a it's called Tutelo strawberry corn, which is a small ear corn, like a grain corn, so not quite like sweet corn like you would buy at the grocery store. It's a little bit harder and easier to store. And I know she's been seed saving that for many years. There's also a long yellow squash that I'm blanking on the name of. It's like a summer squash, similar to like a zucchini though, like a yellow squash that vines up and really nicely and has these huge, is it World Wonder squash? I'm thinking that's the name. Um,
Yes, that's the
yeah,
name.
thank you. World Wonder squash. But so those are two really big crops. And I know I'm forgetting a ton of them, but those I know specifically Sue has been saving seeds for.
I'm also thinking like the Three Sisters, the squash, the beans, the corn. That's a big one for us. Um, Herschel pumpkin, that's another
Mm.
big one for us. So those are kind of things that we've been thinking about.
Oh, I just remembered another one, creasy greens, which are also known as upland cress, I think wild rocket too. They're in the like arugula family. The elders love creasy greens. I've never had them, which I'm really bummed about, but I am very excited to try them for the first time because I love trying new veggies.
We had an elder, Aunt Hattie is what we called her. And before she passed away, she used to always, she'd go out looking for it and find it, harvest it, come back and clean it. And it was delicious when she made it. When I tried, I didn't clean it enough, so it wasn't so great. But the actual dish, if made properly, is really good.
Yum. Yeah, and they grow wild, right? You can also cultivate them, but I believe you can find them just out in the woods.
Yes, wild. Yep.
Very cool.
All right, the next question is another funding question. It is, what are the other funding sources that either you already use or you might, be looking to use?
Yeah, sure. I can do a non-exhaustive kind of rundown, and Sally, you can kind of tag team with the food bank. We do get funding from the Bureau of Indian Affairs as well as the Department of Transportation, HUD, Housing and Urban Development. I'm blanking, childcare, and there are a few. I believe there's a few like nonprofit philanthropic grants as well, but I'm not super aware of stuff outside of my program, so that could be something we could kind of prepare just a general list of organizations that we partner with. I think that would be pretty easy to come up with. Sally, did you have anything to add?
Yes, we on the food bank side,
Mm.
we get funding through USDA, and then a lot of nonprofit organizations. Growing Justice is one of them off the top of my head that I can think of. Greater Lynchburg, that's another one. Um, those we partner with Blue Ridge Area Food Bank, so they have some funding, grant things that we apply for through them. So those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
While we're on the budget, we have a couple other questions that have popped up. The first one is, are there funds or a preset budget in place set aside for gardening and farming agriculture that's already a budget that's in place?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, so is there already a preset budget in place for gardening, farming, and agriculture, is what the question asks.
Not yet on my side. The EPA tends to be pretty specific in what it can work on. It has to be under the umbrella of Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, and kind of the other focus areas of the EPA. It's something I'm hoping to kind of add into our budget as we kind of build our programs out. But I think, Sally, you have a little bit more leeway on that side of things, and maybe can speak to that a little bit more on the cultural side.
We do not have a budget in place per se, but we are actually working on a budget as we speak for our gardening program, which will include partnerships between the nonprofit side, which is where I fall, and the federal side, which is where John falls. So we're working on that now. But as of right this second, we don't have a set budget, but we're working on something.
And then with that being said, we had another question that was asking more specifically about this project and the Laurel Cliff land and what you think would be a reasonable budget for the scope of this project. I know it's kind of a tricky question.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think in my brief experience, I would say like any one project, I feel like it's almost is falling in easily into the like 100 to 250,000 range. So like for instance, the dam renovation stuff that I was talking about earlier, that the quotes from like environmental engineers and stuff and state, dam engineers and things that I've talked to have put the restoration project alone just to get the dam back into compliance and restored and kind of functioning as it should. That is kind of in the 150 to 250,000 range. So I would say like maybe that would be a good like median kind of area, 250,000 per project. So if you have like 3 like big scope projects, that might be bigger or smaller, but that's kind of, I would say, like a good ballpark.
Yes, I will also add to that and say that it really depends on what you're exactly wanting to do within each of those, because some things can cost much more than others. So it will really depend on your individual wants for the project.
Yeah, so that would be actually probably a bigger one because you'd be doing a lot of like earth moving and contractor stuff and permitting and all that. So that's probably on the higher end of what like one segment of this would be. Whereas like maybe a wildfire management plan is just kind of figuring out, like working with the forest department and staff that they already have on hand to help us with stuff. It could kind of be as big or as small as you would like to make it, I think.
With that being said, someone also asked if there are already plans in place to use the land for certain things.
Yeah, great question. I know there are plans that we are putting like an arbor, like a big kind of monument arbor type situation out behind the big house for the next powwow. So that will be a permanent structure that was designed as part of like a tourism grant, I believe. And that's another, we received a tourism grant for like economic development purposes. So that's another potential funding place. But that and then like installing of bathroom facilities and stuff like that, that would be those are kind of the 2 short-term plans that are like gonna go in this year. I already mentioned the dam as well. That's kind of hopefully on the near horizon, as well as the food sovereignty stuff that Sally and I have been talking about, and gardening, market gardening. Longer term, we would love to do like have like either a farmer's market or an agricultural, some sort of way to get all the agricultural projects out, things that like economic development, things that would serve as economic development. I know the chief is really excited about building maybe like a youth center. I think that could be a really cool like idea to help engage tribal youth and honestly start building out our environmental program a little bit more and get like tribal youth engaged with the program and start to get their awesome input and feedback and get them, trained and ready to help us do all the stuff that we want to do. I'm forgetting some other stuff as well, but there are a lot of kind of like longer term plans that we just are really trying to get the groundwork laid for. So that's kind of where this comes in. This would be a really great source of ideas for us and hopefully for y'all to kind of think about as well. Um, we just did do an economic development assessment of Laurel Cliff as well, so we're going to be getting the results from that shortly and have kind of ideas on what we can do more kind of with that biocultural restoration in terms of tourism, in terms of agriculture, in terms of restoring the connection between the people and the land. The gentleman that's doing that survey had a lot of really awesome conversations with elders and community members to kind of weave in what they've been talking about and what they would like to see. So everything from like a dance hall community space to like youth center, trade school. I feel like I'm forgetting a million different ideas, but like tribal housing and community housing, that would be another one for like elders to live close with other community members so that they're not just on their own wherever they're able to find housing, like have actual tribal citizenship, intergenerational community, I guess.
Great. The next question I'm seeing is that you mentioned the land is used for some spiritual events. Can you provide more detail on the requirements for these events so that we can factor in community needs when developing our plan?
Yeah, I am not super familiar with the spiritual side of the programming. So, Sally, I know you have a little bit more information on that. I don't want to put you on the spot, but could you maybe?
I'm of course the big one is the powwow, which is already, being done there. And our ceremonies such as like Sweat Lodge and things like that will all be staying at the Bear Mountain. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm looking at the question, trying to make sure that I try to answer it correctly. Spiritual events. I'm not exactly sure where that's going to play in at Laurel Cliff. I'm not sure that we've even just really had in-depth conversations about that. All of those things that I'm thinking of. Again, like I said, the big one is the powwow, and that definitely will stay at Laurel Cliff, while our other ceremonies, which, like I said, like Vision Quests, Sweat Lodges, all of those things will be staying at Bear Mountain. So um, I know that's not the best answer, and I apologize, but it's the best one I can give you.
No worries, Sally. Thank you. Speaking of the powwow, though, someone asked where on Laurel Cliff does the powwow actually occur?
Yeah, let me go back to my slide with the lake map here just a moment because it's a little easier to see. So you can see this, there's actually kind of a little square behind the house in the middle of the Google Maps picture there, kind of right south of the lake. That yard area, I guess we can call it, the field behind the house basically is where the actual like dance circle and all the vendors are set up and the food trucks and the admissions goes on that little driveway to the north of the house, and then parking on either side of this kind of road into the house, which is really beautiful magnolia lined way that we just use these fields basically for parking. So even like permeable parking that won't affect the water resources, like that could be a cool way to take this, like to help with parking for the powwow, because it's a huge event. I mean, this property was I don't have numbers on it, but the property was acquired because the powwow had, first of all, the tribe wanted to own the grounds that the powwow were on, I believe, but also it kind of outgrown the previous venue from what I know. So I think this provides a much bigger space for everybody to get together, and it's really served nicely the past years that I've been. So yeah.
I think I saw a question earlier that was also asking how Laurel Cliff was actually gained by the Monacan Nation.
Oh yeah, I saw that as well. So that was shortly after federal recognition. I believe it was basically kind of just went on the market at the right time. I think there were funds available, and it was kind of seen as a asset for the tribe. I think I don't want to mischaracterize that, but that's my understanding, was that it would be a really great venue for the powwow, and we could also start to engage in these projects that we've been talking about today. Whether it's agroecology or forestry or what have you. It seemed like it kind of did a lot of things at once.
And that land is so close to Bear Mountain. That was at one point, all of this land around Laurel Cliff, all of that was at one point owned by Monacan. It was Monacan territory.
Yes.
So it was very important to us. And it's, we've looked at other parcels and things like that close to Bear Mountain as well. But it was incredibly important to us to make sure that we purchased something that was, ours to begin with. It was our territory to begin with, if that makes
Yes.
sense. And like John said, it kind of all just fell into place at the right time. And it's so important to us to be able to have our own powwow grounds. We go out, we bless the grounds before the powwow. We bless them after the powwow. So it's important that it's our own, for those reasons. So it kind of just all fell into, right time, right place kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's a great point to make, Sally. Thank you. I meant to mention too, when you're actually at powwow, like the dance circle is like, you can see High Peak, and which is part of the Tobacco Row Mountains, and then Bear Mountain just to the northeast of that, which is again where the museum is. And so being able to like see the mountains and see Bear Mountain specifically, it's just really it really brings it home and makes it feel like that much more part of the community, and kind of brings in the connection that the Monacan people have always had to Bear Mountain.
All right, we have a question about plants. Is there any type of specific plants that MIN would like to include within their ecosystems?
Oh yeah, that's a great fun question. I think main thing, definitely native, regional, not only native to North America, but really thinking about like micro regional native plants. So things that are super adapted to this climate of the kind of hill and valley and region of Central Virginia and the Piedmont province. There's already a lot of orchards around, and there is a big connection to apples in the Monacan community. A lot of the elders can remember working in apple orchards. So I think like having a Monacan owned apple orchard would be a really cool, like long-term, another idea that I think a lot of people would be really excited about. That would be, again, kind of what Sally was talking about in the last question, like on Monacan land and on Monacan terms. So owned by the tribe and for the tribe, and then also giving back to the community as well through that. I think like pawpaws and other kind of awesome like fruit for not just people, but things that, everything that lives out in the forest and eats, browse for deer. So anything, things that, keep their berries on longer in the winter for birds, forage and food plots for deer, for hunting season, things like that. Or for turkeys, there's a lot of wild turkeys on the property as well. So thinking about like turkey food, I know they eat a lot of just whatever, but they eat whatever they can find. But I think it would be cool to have like a very intentionally like this species would be great for this attendant species that we want to boost populations of, or what have you. And thinking about like water plants, there's also river cane, which is a relative of bamboo, but it's intensely important to a lot of indigenous communities throughout Appalachia. You could start thinking about river cane, arrow arum, and wild rice, which we might not have the ecosystem for. I think those are more like river crops, but at least arrowroot is a little bit does a little bit better in like lake situations, but like cattails as well. Things that have kind of multiple uses, like food and medicinal or food and spiritual. I've done a ton of research on trying to grow sweetgrass. I think that would be another really cool um, idea. Trying to think what else.
Yeah, I was definitely going to add the sweetgrass because at certain times of the year when you drive by at the right time, if your windows are down, you can smell the sweetgrass.
Oh, so
So
nice.
there is some sweetgrass already growing, but to intentionally have it there, I think that would be a great one.
We have several questions about hunting specifically. So, what occurs during a hunt? How does it start? Is it planned? How often do they occur? And how much do they come up back with? Lots of questions.
Yeah, great questions. I so we have basically before hunting season every year. The I know Jess from the Cultural Foundation works with some of the other like tribal council members and folks that hunt to kind of plan what the hunting season is going to look like and how it's going to work. I don't have too much details on the hunting program right now, unfortunately. So that's something I can kind of come back to Byron with, and she can have distributed out. But we can kind of get that. I can get that information unless you have something to add, Sally.
I know that we grid out certain parts of the area and then our hunters will sign up for that week to be in that grid. That kind of keeps that's for more so safety issues to make sure there's not too many hunters in the same area at the same time. And deer is a big one. Matter of fact, at this point, deer is the only thing that we're hunting on the property. And that's just on, deer season. But right now, the way it looks is that it's gridded out. Our hunters come in and say, okay, I want this part, part A or whatever, this week. And then maybe 3 weeks from there, they might take part C. Depending on, how many hunters are signing up for that particular season.
We had another question about hunting come in. Does tribal land fall under the same hunting laws as other land in Virginia?
I believe it's private property, right, Sally? It's considered like
It is private property, and we do not have to get a hunting license, as Monacans in Virginia. So I think I think because it's a private land, we kind of have our own rules, if I'm not mistaken.
that's my understanding as well, but I don't want to misspeak on that. So I can provide an update if I did step on any
Yeah, I agree with
lands
that.
there.
I think we might want to come back to that once we have a little bit more information.
The another hunting question came in. Which areas of the land does the hunting actually happen in?
Yeah, so I know specifically I have been all around the like southern fields with or southern like margins of the fields that are easy to get around to show where Scotty's been hunting. Scotty is our among many other things, he drives the elders to like medical appointments and to lunches and stuff. So he's around pretty regularly, and I like to go out with him because he just knows the woods because he's out there all the time. So I know specifically he's out in the southern areas a lot, just checking it out. So these kind of pastures south of the lake and the big house, kind of the southeast portion of the property, but I think it's kind of throughout the woods throughout the property, right? Except for maybe some of the up near the houses.
I think you're correct on that. But again, I'm not part of the hunting committee. I don't hunt.
Mhm.
We have a lot of female hunters. Don't get me wrong, I'm just not one of them. So I think you're correct.
I can have a chat with Jess and she can fill me in because I'm realizing I'm woefully ignorant of some of the hunting stuff actually.
I've got another hunting question.
Right.
Are there any specific animals that are important culturally for you to be able to hunt?
So I'll start off with that. Deer is a big one. Turkey is another. We don't hunt bear normally. Um, because the bear is a relative of ours. I don't want to completely say that all Monacans, because there are some that do hunt bear, but traditionally we do not hunt bear. So I would stick to more of the deer and the turkey and things like that.
Hmm. And then for fishing, definitely trout, but also kind of recreational fish like bass, crappie. Um, I saw a question about the fish in the lake. The EPA actually came out and did a fish survey and fish tissue sample for us on the lake, and it was bass, crappie, and I always forget the third one. I think it's pumpkin seed sunnies. I don't quite remember, but I think it's sunnies. It's another like small kind of recreational fish. So no catfish. We would love to be like if there's potential, we would love to have like freshwater mussels or something in some of that lake to try and improve the water quality. So that would probably not be a food species, but just something to kind of keep in mind with like lake biology. Um, but yeah, those would be the kind of major hunting species. I know some of the elders hunt like squirrel and rabbit and stuff too. So those are also definitely yeah.
Talking about species, someone asks if there are any endangered species or any other types of species that you would specifically like to work on replenishing populations for.
Hmm. Yeah, well, I think definitely as much as we can do for the bears, I think that would be much appreciated and really folks it would be easy for folks to get behind like adding like bear uh bear forest or a bear food forest or something like that. I think that could be really cool. We do see them all the time up on Bear Mountain. So it's very aptly named. Sue sees them a lot at the museum when she's um doing doing the garden. And oh, that was another species I meant to mention actually too. Another plant species is elderberry. She grows a lot of elderberry plants. Those are really popular with both bears and birds. So she has trouble getting any elderberries off of the plants, but they I remember her saying one time she went out, everything was full of berries, and then the next day it was just like everything was gone. But yeah, so the I would say as far as endangered species go, there are I think like endangered. I know there's a couple of endangered bats in um this area of Virginia, which is not something we talked about yet. And I think bats would be like a bat habitat project would be really cool because they're awesome um pollinators. Not a lot of people know that, but they do pollinate like tree plants, especially. Bats and bees, things that have kind of trouble keeping their populations up would be really cool um, species to kind of support.
Someone else, I do just want to bring up this comment. Someone asked if we could get a map of the land and where certain activities take place. So, John, if you're open to it, we can absolutely work on that and try and get some more resources out to you all. And then another question we got was, has the soil been tested? And if not, is that something you're interested in? And is soil improvement a goal for the land?
Yeah, definitely. So the soil has not been tested to my knowledge. It may have been tested by previous owners, but we're definitely interested in it. We were just talking about soil tests yesterday for that uh, kind of food sovereignty grant that Sally and I were talking about. And soil improvement is definitely a goal for the land. It was heavily grazed for many, many years, and I don't know what types. It's difficult to know with land use history what previous owners were doing. I'll just leave it at that because I don't know exactly what the history of the land was. But I mean, we're surrounded by pretty standard like agricultural orchards and stuff that I'm sure are spraying and doing all kinds of things like that. So, um, hoping to improve that soil health and improve like do composting and fertility with like livestock and things like that would be a really cool direction to take the project in. I guess that's part of the prompt, and you kind of have to. But I'm excited to see what you guys come up with for soil health planning, because that's definitely a goal for the land.
Someone also asked, do you have a museum on the property? And I can just go ahead and say, yes, there is a museum, the Heritage Museum. It is a great resource and highly recommend you checking it out. John and Sally can also vouch for it. But yes.
To be clear, that's actually not on the Laurel Cliff parcel, though. That's on
Yes.
the separate parcel. And I can do a map too of I meant to include this in my slides, but there's like it's like several non-contiguous properties throughout Amherst County that the tribal nation owns. So I can send that out to Byron, and she can get that to y'all with labels and everything. So I'll show you guys where kind of things are happening.
Yeah. Well, it is 5:32, so I know that we said that we would only go until 5:30. If anyone else has any, questions that you really want to get to John or Sally, speak now, or I would say forever hold your peace, but you can also contact me and I will be sure to get your questions to John and Sally if you have any. But other than that, John, Sally, do you have anything else that you want to add before we kind of wrap things up?
I don't think so. Really fantastic questions. I'm sure I'll think of a trillion things after we jump off the call, but that was a really awesome. You guys had fantastic questions again. So I just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time this afternoon and evening, and yeah, really looking forward to the projects and stuff.
I just would agree with John. The questions were great. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing what comes out of it. So thank you guys, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I do want to thank Sally again really quick. This was kind of a last minute scramble to get folks on when I realized that Chief Shields was double booked. So I want to thank Byron and y'all for being gracious. And just once again, I thank you so much, Sally, for jumping on the call and taking time.
All right, I will let people hop off. We have had a question pop in, so if John and Sally, if you're willing to stay on a little longer.
Yeah.
Someone asked if the management plan in our Envirothon prompt, one of the key points is the post-timber harvest land usage. And if you all plan on selling the timber, and could you just speak more on the land usage and the timber in general? Is it a long-term business consideration?
Yes.
Like that.
So, really quickly, the areas in the green on this map were outlined in green were basically clear cut in about 2005 or 2006 by the previous owners, and replaced with monocrop pine plantations. So, takes about 20 years for a pine stand to reach like timbering age, and so we're hoping to have we're hoping to build a plan to basically like return that to what it would have looked like previously. We don't really want to keep it in a monocrop that would be difficult for that would not be unrecognizable to a Monacan ancestor if they were to suddenly show up on this land in the modern day. So we would love to like restore that with a bunch of natives and do like a food forest or a trail or some sort of way to kind of restore some of that ecological and biological diversity back to the forest that's on those plots. But yeah, I mean, I think that'll be a conversation with tribal council and leadership. I don't want to say that we're definitely going to timber this land, but I think that is definitely a consideration, especially for like economic purposes. It would be a really good opportunity to kind of restore another part of the property that has been kind of modified.
All right, super quick. Do you happen to know what tree succession phase the forest is on, and if it is oak
Oh,
or pine?
that is a great question. I will ask my like forestry guy because I don't know off the top of my head, but I
No
know
worries.
it's mostly oak. In the areas that were not clear cut, it's mostly like oak, hickory, and maple. There's a lot of maple, especially on the ridges and um, sloped areas. But yeah, that's the major. There's some pine out in the woods, but it's definitely mostly deciduous.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you staying a little after
Of
5:30.
course.
But yes, thank you both so much for joining. This was fantastic, and I think this was a great resource, and I also learned a lot. So thank you both so much for your time, and I look forward to continuing the Envirothon and Monacan Indian Nation collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. Really quick, this is one of those baskets. There's a ton of great pictures of them online, but this is one of Miss Birdie's baskets. It's a lot of material, and I'm trying to get information on exactly how much you need for one basket, but I'll try to get that to Byron as well. I'll take some notes and we'll be back to you guys with more information. Thank you so much for all the awesome questions. And thanks again to Sally, Byron, and everybody that hopped on today.
Thank you, everyone, for having me.
Thank you. All right. Thanks everybody for joining. This is recorded and I will send it to everybody and it will be available on our website. So yeah, thank you all for joining.